You know that feeling? Drowning in tabs, articles piling up, all promising that one key insight.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Exactly. So that's why we do this. Today, we're diving into a really interesting address. It's from Pope Benedict XVI back in 2008, speaking to Catholic educators right here in the U.S.
And it wasn't just K-12 schools, right? It was
Yeah,
the whole range, universities too.
the whole spectrum, yeah.
Yeah.
So our mission, you could say, for this deep dive is to really pull out the core message. What did he see as the essential identity, the real value of Catholic education? We want to find those takeaways that matter, well, really to anyone interested in how faith shapes education.
Okay. And what's really striking right from the outset is how he frames it. It's not just presented as, another educational option.
How so?
Fundamentally, he sees it as a place for an encounter. He actually points back to his encyclical Spe Salvi, that's the one on hope.
Right, hope.
And he emphasizes that the primary goal is to encounter the living God through Jesus Christ. So it's deeper than just academics. It's about connecting personally in a way that offers real hope.
That makes sense, that transforming love and truth he mentions. And he suggests that from that first encounter, this desire naturally grows to know more about Christ by his teachings.
Precisely. It's like that initial spark, that connection lights a fire for deeper understanding. But it's an intellectual curiosity that's grounded in something much bigger than, say, just getting good grades.
So the key insight isn't simply Catholic schools teach religion. It's that they see their main purpose as facilitating this divine encounter, which then informs everything else they do.
Exactly. And it's not meant to be just an individual thing happening in isolation. He's quite clear on that.
Okay.
He stresses how this encounter, when it's really brought alive by the gospel, leads to a life characterized by, beauty, goodness, truth, and lived out within the community, the church. It's personal transformation tied to a shared witness.
All right, let's maybe dig into this phrase he uses, the diaconia of truth. Diaconia. That sounds like service.
That's exactly it, service. The church sees itself as having this ongoing duty, this service of offering every generation the chance to discover, ultimate truth. The meaning of it all, the direction of history.
And for educators, this is a constant task.
A constant task, yes. Making sure God's truth isn't just, a subject in a textbook, but something that genuinely permeates the whole environment. So the core insight isn't just teaching truth, but seeing that teaching as a fundamental service to humanity, a continuous offering addressing our deepest questions.
He also makes a really specific point about objective truth. He contrasts it with just, subjective feeling or personal opinion. Why is that distinction so important for him here?
Well, the Pope argues that this objective truth, something real, independent of what I or you might think, points to the universal, the absolute. And this, he says, is vital because it gives us a solid ground for hope.
Hope again.
Yes, he even quotes Romans about hope not disappointing us. Think about it in a world with so much personal struggle, moral confusion sometimes, knowledge feeling scattered. Catholic education, if it's built on this unified idea of truth, becomes this, powerful instrument of hope, real stability.
It's true. We sometimes forget just how long the Catholic Church has been involved in education here in the U.S.
Yeah.
He brings up people like St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, St. Catherine Drexel, really inspiring figures.
Absolutely. And what he highlights is their tenacity, their foresight. They weren't just founding schools, they were building networks, often against huge odds.
Right.
Really focused on the spiritual well-being of the church and the country. And someone like St. Catherine Drexel, her focus was so specific, serving communities that were often neglected, like African Americans and Native Americans. It was quite radical.
And it wasn't only these famous saints, was it? You make sure to mention the countless sacrifices. Ordinary sisters, brothers, priests, parents, especially helping immigrant families find a foothold through education. It's a powerful legacy.
A huge legacy. And he stresses that this commitment isn't just history, it's ongoing. He calls it an apostolate of hope that's still serving millions today.
But he also gets practical, right, about funding.
Yes, he brings up the need for financial support for accessibility, making sure that every child, no matter their family's income, has the right to this kind of faith-based education.
Okay, so given that the U.S. does have a robust public education system, the question does come up. Why the need for specifically Catholic schools? What's their unique role?
He tackles that head on. He grounds it in the church's basic mission, evangelization,
Which means,
essentially sharing the good news, the core beliefs. And he emphasizes that this mission comes directly from God's own self-revelation. He even quotes Scripture, Ephesians, and De Verbum, the Vatican II document on Revelation, to show its divine roots.
so it circles back to that encounter we talked about, but happening within a community context. He mentions a shift from I to we. What's the significance there?
That shift, that I becoming we, and he references Pope John Paul II's Fides et Ratio here, it highlights that our search for truth, for meaning, isn't really a solo journey. It's within that Christian community, he argues, that our innate human desire for truth finds its proper home, its fullest expression. It's where individuals become part of God's people.
Let's talk about Catholic identity. It's a phrase you hear a lot, but Pope Benedict says it's not just about, counting how many Catholic students are enrolled. So what does define it in his view?
He puts it as a core conviction, a question really. Do we actually believe that the deepest truth about being human is revealed in Jesus, the Word made flesh? He points to Gaudium et Spes from Vatican II for that.
Okay.
And believing that requires a total commitment, intellect, will, heart, everything, giving ourselves to God and accepting the truth Christ reveals.
And this faith, it can't just be theoretical, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be visible, tangible.
Absolutely. He insists it has to be lived out in the institution. You should see it in the liturgy, the sacraments, the prayer life, how people treat each other, the commitment to charity and justice, even respect for the environment, for creation. It needs to permeate everything.
He then raises concerns about a crisis of truth today, and he links it directly to a crisis of faith. How does he see those two connected?
His argument is that faith is what enables us to freely say yes to God's testimony, to trust God as the ultimate guarantor of truth. So if faith weakens, our grasp on truth, our confidence in it, also tends to waver.
I see.
That's why, for him, nurturing that personal relationship with Christ and witnessing to his truth together as a community is so vital for Catholic education.
He also voices a worry that maybe we focused a lot on engaging the intellect, but perhaps neglected the will. What does he mean by that? What are the consequences?
Well, he suggests that if we only focus on intellect and ignore the training of the will, our capacity to choose the good, we can end up with a kind of distorted idea of freedom.
How?
Like, freedom just means the ability to opt out, to reject things, rather than the positive freedom to opt in, to choose, to embrace, to participate in being itself, which for him is inseparable from God.
So true freedom isn't turning away from God.
He'd argue it can't be, because turning away from God means turning away from the very truth that helps us understand ourselves. So freedom isn't just saying no, it's the capacity to say a meaningful yes.
Which means educators have this big responsibility to kind of awaken that desire for faith, to encourage that opting in to the life of the church where he believes true freedom and truth meet. What does that look like practically?
Oh, it could be many things. Actively joining in prayer, liturgy, service projects, wrestling with tough theological questions instead of avoiding them, consciously trying to live out Christian values day to day.
Right. So this Catholic identity, it's much more than just numbers or checking doctrinal boxes. It's about the whole community being alive with faith. And he says, only then can truth really take root and reason become fully human, leading us to real freedom.
Exactly. That's the connection he draws.
And he argues this isn't just an internal church matter, is it? He sees these institutions making a crucial contribution to the wider society.
Definitely. By fostering this recognition of God's presence, by helping young people grasp Christ's call to be people for others. He uses that phrase from Spe Salvi. Now, again, these schools are part of evangelization, yes. But he sees that mission as perfectly aligning with any nation's goal of building a society worthy of human dignity.
Now, what about the classic tension or perceived tension between faith and reason? That comes up a lot. How does he address it?
He's very firm on this. He states clearly that the truths of faith and the truths of reason can never actually contradict each other. He references church councils, St. Augustine.
Yeah.
He actually sees the church's role as purifying reason, keeping it open to the big questions, the ultimate truths, not letting it get stuck in just the measurable or the immediately practical. By drawing on divine wisdom, the church sheds light on the very foundations of morality and ethics.
So far from being an obstacle to public discussion, he thinks the church's voice, grounded in this way, actually helps. It provides a basis for common ground, keeps the debate rational.
Precisely. By holding up these essential moral truths, the church pushes back against a purely pragmatic or utilitarian view of people. It insists that truth should guide what we do, which, he believes, makes rational, honest public debate and even consensus more achievable.
He then takes on the challenges of secularism, and he uses this term positivistic mentality.
Uh.
What's the issue he's identifying there?
The core issue is that in a very secular context, where faith and truth are often separated, there's a danger of reducing truth only to what's scientifically provable or empirically verifiable.
Right, facts and data.
Exactly. This leads to what he calls positivism, which tends to dismiss metaphysics questions about ultimate reality and sees morality as purely subjective or relative. But Pope Benedict argues truth is much bigger than just data. It's connected to the good. It demands a response from us, from our whole person.
Like your example earlier, knowing how to do something versus knowing whether you should.
Exactly. It involves the moral dimension.
And he positions Christian faith, with its concept of the Logos, God's reason, God's word, as the corrective, showing that God's reason is also inherently goodness itself.
Yes, he stresses that the truth of the gospel isn't just information. It's meant to be transformative. It changes us. So he sees Christian educators as having this vital task, helping young people break free from the limits of just positivism, reawakening their openness to the bigger picture of truth, to God, and helping them form a sound conscience.
Which brings us to another really interesting phrase, intellectual charity. What does he mean by that? It sounds quite profound.
It is. He defines it as the recognition that guiding young people towards truth isn't just a job, it's an act of love. It's about genuinely wanting their best, their true flourishing, their deepest happiness.
What intellectual charity means.
It means upholding the unity of knowledge against all the fragmentation we see. It means helping students discover the deep satisfaction that comes from using their freedom in relation to truth.
And it connects faith to everything else in life.
Yes. Showing how faith isn't separate, but illuminates all aspects of life. It's about sparking that desire for the fullness of truth and inspiring students to go out and contribute to society with real hope.
It's a high calling for educators.
A very high calling, acknowledging the immense responsibility they have, not just for minds, but for whole persons.
And speaking of educators, towards the end, he directly addresses them. He acknowledges their hard work, their generosity, and, importantly, academic freedom. But he also draws a line, doesn't he?
He does. He strongly affirms academic freedom, the freedom needed for rigorous research and the pursuit of truth. Absolutely essential. However, he clarifies that this freedom can't be used within a Catholic institution to justify promoting positions that directly contradict the core teachings of the Church's faith. To do that, he argues, actually betrays the institution's specific identity and mission. It cuts against its very reason for being, which is tied to the Church's teaching role.
So, teachers, administrators, they have a duty to ensure the instruction reflects Catholic teaching and that this shapes the whole life of the institution.
Yes, he emphasizes consistency. When there's divergence, he warns, it weakens that Catholic identity, leads to confusion, undermines the mission. He also gives special encouragement to catechists, people teaching the faith directly,
Right.
and makes a particular plea to religious sisters, brothers, priests to stay involved in schools, especially in poorer areas. Their witness, living the evangelical counsels, he says, is invaluable. And he encourages promoting vocations, too.
His final message, then, to all involved in Catholic education is pretty direct, isn't it?
Very direct. Be witnesses to hope. Nourish that hope with prayer. Live the truth you're proposing to your students. It all comes back to that encounter. Help students know and love Christ.
And he ends by reminding them, and us, really, that everyone involved, teachers and students alike, are fellow disciples, learning together. He quotes St. Augustine there.
A powerful image of shared learning.
So wrapping up this deep dive, Pope Benedict's vision is clearly way beyond just schooling. It's framed as this journey, this encounter with truth through faith that aims to shape the whole person and, through them, contribute positively to society. It certainly gives you a lot to think about regarding faith's role in forming individuals and communities. Maybe consider for yourself, how does your understanding of truth connect with how you think about learning and growth?